name's Simon Kirby, and I'm Professor of Language Evolution here at the University of Edinburgh. And I was co-founder of the Centre for Language Evolution. In the centre, we have a large group of researchers and students all working to understand the origins of human language. And we specialise in taking an empirical approach to that question by running lab experiments where we try to recreate the evolution of language in miniature in the experiment lab. When we think about language and we think about words in a language, generally we think of words as being essentially arbitrary. The word cat, there's nothing kind of particularly feline about that word. It's just an arbitrary label, an arbitrary set of sounds to refer to that animal. And that's true mostly of words in a language, but there are interesting exceptions. And one of the exceptions is a class of words called Phonaesthemes. And these are words that seem to cluster both in terms of their sound and in terms of their meaning. One example is a cluster of words in English that start with GL. So if you think of a word beginning with GL, you might think glance or glitter or gleam or glow or glimpse. And you realize that all of these words, they start with the same sound and they also mean similar things. They mean something to do with light or vision. And so that makes that very interesting for those of us who are interested in the evolution of language, because we see words like that and think, why is there this exception to this idea that words are arbitrary? What gives rise to this relationship between form and meaning in these special cases in a language? So things like phonaesthemes are interesting to those of us who look at the evolution of language. And the reason why they exist turns out to be to do with history, to do with where those words come from. So it turns out all of these words started from a single word spoken maybe 5,000 years ago at the start of a whole range of languages, actually thousands of languages that have spread around the world, the Indo-European languages. And so there was one word that meant something like to glow or be warm or something of that meaning that then got passed down over many, many generations of people speaking language and learning language and then speaking it and learning it and so on. And as words are passed on this way from generation to generation, their meanings change slowly and their sounds change as well. So what that means is that these words start to change and split apart, and the multiple languages in Europe, for example, all inherit slightly different versions of this word. And then they start borrowing, these words start getting borrowed between languages. So we end up in a language like English with a whole set of words, like different words, but they all come back to that one root.
My name's Tommy Perman. I'm an artist, designer and musician. My work involves many different things. Collaboration's a huge part of it, and I've been working with Professor Simon Kirby for over 10 years. We've done all kinds of different weird and wonderful projects together, including robotic bands and lots of different sound projects and installations. My collaboration with Simon, a lot of his ideas on language evolution came out in discussion over a very long period of time. So I was interested because as an artist, I've been interested in how things, culture evolves. Before I met Simon, I'd been really interested in the idea of remixing in music, but also in art in general. And so when I started to hear Simon talking about his research, it really connected with me. And then I have a good friend called Rob St. John, who is a musician and a writer. And me and Rob have a similar kind of friendship as the one I have with Simon, and Simon and Rob get along very well as well. And it was almost inevitable because of our shared interest that we would see a reason to make stuff together. So Sing the Gloaming has now been a very kind of long-lived project, and it keeps on going. It started probably before 2017 when it was first publicly shown at the Dark Skies Forest Park in Galloway, but has evolved as a project. So in the first iteration, we thought it would be lovely to make this choral piece, so singing these Phonaesthemes, which are all connected to light, that all start with the letters GL, gl. We thought it would be so lovely to get people to sing light words for an installation in a Dark Skies Forest Park, and the installation ran for 24 hours right through the night. The audience could walk in amongst woodland and listen to one of those gl words being sung by a different vocalist. The word was contained in a sculpture, a very small sculpture that you can get up close to and hear the sung words. And you could hear the other sculptures that were in fairly close proximity, a few meters away, in amongst the trees, and hear the relationship between those gl words. So glisten would be sung, looping, and glitter would be off in the distance somewhere. Since then, there's been a number of different versions of it. It's kind of found new life in different situations. For the most recent version of Sing the Gloaming, we wanted to more fully explore the musical side of it. So Simon, Rob and I are lucky enough to know some amazing musicians in Scotland, and we invited some of them to contribute. We decided that we'd like to try and echo some of Simon's lab experiments in the process of creating the record. So we ran a kind of a musical chain where the next participant heard the contribution of the previous participant and based their musical response on that. Each person was given 3 or 4 gl words to sing. We gave them an instruction that they had to think about somewhere that was kind of interesting to them, where the light moved or changed, and go and sing one of these gl words and improvise based on the last person's musical contribution. Simon devised a little computer program that allowed score to be created, which took a journey from the first gl word through time to the more contemporary ones. And we used these computer-generated paths to create compositions. So they were kind of like a score that we could follow to create musical compositions from all the contributions we'd had from the vocalists. And it was a really unusual and fun way of working, something that I'd never done before, which is great. One of the maybe the most tangible impacts that I have seen in Simon's work on my own work is process. So thinking about processes and how they can help create artwork. And I was really interested in the lab experiments and the processes that Simon and his team have done to conduct their experiments, and how they might be used to create artwork, and how they also mirror some processes that artists and designers already use, particularly iterations. I think art relies on iterations, thinking back to being a kid and practicing drawing, just drawing the same thing over and over again and getting better at doing it, or as a musician practicing and perhaps copying your favorite musicians, learning the songs that they played and learning them by ear, and then making them your own and maybe teaching them to other people. And these processes seem to mirror the theories that Simon and his team have about cultural evolution. And I just see the parallels in art and music so strongly. And it comes up time and time again when I'm thinking about making work, thinking about these processes and thinking about how I enjoy using them all the time, almost, I guess, intuitively, just as part of making. It's reinforced that, thinking about Simon's research. I like this crossover between art and science, how comfortable they can fit together sometimes, and how they share approaches and share this curiosity about the world and the way things work and all of that.